Have you ever wondered what really happens if you're in a lawsuit and someone just, well, doesn't bother to show up? It's a question that has some very real and surprisingly specific consequences.
It might sound like something out of a TV drama, but skipping a court date is a huge deal. The outcome isn't just a toss-up. It's actually guided by a really clear set of rules, all designed to keep the wheels of justice turning.
So, to make all this crystal clear, we're going to follow a hypothetical case. Let's meet Priya. She's the plaintiff, the one who filed the lawsuit. And then we have Dev, the defendant she's suing. Their story is going to show us exactly what's on the line when someone decides to miss their day in court.
Okay, before we jump into all the what-if scenarios, we've got to get one thing straight: the court's core expectation. There's one golden rule that pretty much governs this entire process. It all kicks off with this piece of paper, the summons. Now, it might sound like a friendly invitation, but trust me, it's a legal command. It's the document that officially tells you, hey, you're being sued, and orders you to show up in court on a certain day, and yet it is absolutely non-negotiable.
In a perfect world, the whole thing is pretty simple. The summons is delivered, both Priya and Dev show up on time, ready to go, and the hearing just moves forward. But what's really interesting is what happens when this perfect scenario completely falls apart. So let's dive into our first what if. Okay, so picture this. The court date arrives. The judge calls the case. Dev, the defendant, is there, all set to defend himself. But Priya, the very person who started this whole thing, she's a no-show. So here's the bottom line. If the person who brought the lawsuit doesn't even bother to show up and argue for it, the court is not going to wait around. Under Rule 8, the judge will just dismiss the whole case. For Dev, that means he can literally just walk away. The case against him is dropped. Simple as that. All right, now let's flip the script. This time, Priya shows up to court. She's on time, she's got her evidence, she is ready to make her case. But Dev's chair? It is completely empty. He's vanished. Now, in this situation, the court doesn't just call it a day. As long as the judge is sure that Dev got his summons and knew he had to be there, the court will proceed ex parte. Now, that's a fancy Latin term, but it literally just means from one party. And that's exactly what happens. The hearing goes on with only one side of the story being told. This right here shows the huge, huge risk a defendant takes by being a no-show. Under what's known as Rule 6, the court can listen to everything Priya has to say, totally unopposed, and then issue a final judgment or decree in her favor. In other words, Dev basically loses by default. Okay, so what about our third, and honestly simplest possibility? The court clerk calls the case of Priya versus Dev, and you hear crickets. The courtroom is totally empty. Neither the plaintiff nor the defendant decided to show up. According to Rule 3, the court's reaction here is pretty straightforward. If nobody shows up, the lawsuit is dismissed. End of story. The court's time is incredibly valuable, and it's not going to be wasted on a case that the parties themselves don't even care enough about to attend. The case gets wiped from the list, and everyone is right back where they started.
But hang on. What if there was a really, really good reason for missing that court date? A sudden medical emergency, a car crash. I mean, life happens, right? Is a dismissal or one of those ex-parte judgments always the final word? Well, not always.
The law actually gets that things can go wrong. It provides a path back into court. But, and this is a big but, it is not automatic. The person who is absent has to prove they had a sufficient cause for not being there. And believe me, that is a pretty high bar to clear. So the process, which is laid out in a few different rules, is really clear. First, you have to formally apply to the court. Then you have to provide actual proof, like a doctor's note or police report, of why you were gone. If the court agrees that your reason is legitimate, it can cancel its earlier order. But this second chance usually comes with a price tag. The court can make you pay the other person's legal costs for the day you wasted.
So let's step back and look at the why behind all these rules. I mean, they might seem a little harsh, but they exist for a super important reason: to maintain a really delicate balance right at the heart of our justice system.
You see, all these procedures are basically a balancing act between two famous legal sayings that pull in opposite directions. On one side, you have justice delayed is justice denied. The system has to be efficient, right? No-shows clog everything up. But on the other side, there's justice hurried is justice buried. Rushing to a decision without hearing from everyone can lead to a totally unfair result. These rules are the system's best attempt to walk that tightrope.
Now, courts do have some wiggle room. They can grant adjournments, postponements, if there's a good reason. But their patience isn't endless. While it's not a law set in stone, a court will typically only grant about 3 of these per party before they start getting a lot stricter. They've got to keep things moving.
And that brings us to just how seriously the system treats these delays. A huge landmark ruling basically said, look, if you cause a delay, you're not just going to pay some tiny fee. Nope. You have to pay the realistic costs the other side had to deal with because of you. Their lawyers' fees for the day, their travel, the whole shebang. It's a pretty powerful reason to take the court's schedule seriously.
So what is the big takeaway from all of this? It's actually pretty simple. Showing up for court is not optional. Not showing up has immediate and really serious consequences, no matter if you're the one suing or the one being sued. And while, yeah, there are ways to fix a genuine mistake, you are taking a huge gamble counting on it. At the end of the day, these rules are the engine that keeps the entire justice system from grinding to a halt for everybody.
Ultimately, this whole process just shines a light on the constant tension that courts deal with every single day. How do you enforce a strict, efficient set of rules while also dealing with the messy, unpredictable reality of people's lives? Finding that perfect balance between procedure and basic fairness, well, that remains one of the legal system's biggest and most important challenges.